I want to introduce Jonathan Alboum. He's the Federal CTO at ServiceNow, and Jonathan has been an advisor to many companies and an executive, a previous executive in government. He's also been an active member in the IT community with organizations such as ACT-IAC, AFFIRM, and many others. So, Jonathan, thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
So for those who have not met you through any of those networking opportunities or when through your work, talk a bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. So, first of all, I think it's great that you do this podcast. So people have the opportunity to share their career journeys, because what I found was they're all very different, and there's not one path that leads to a successful career in the government or a successful career in the technology field. There's lots of ways to get there. But I've only learned that since I've been working, and since I've been more mature in my work experience. When I started my career, I came out of a very traditional path. I went to college right after high school. I studied engineering. I studied systems engineering at the University of Virginia, and out of UVA, got a job at Price Waterhouse. Did consulting. Very traditional kind of approach for some. I didn't really consider other options, right? It was like, this is what I need to do. Very regimented. Not everybody, you don't have to be that regimented to get to the same place I am today, but that's sort of how I did it. And, from Price Waterhouse, I traveled a lot. I decided I wanted to stop traveling. I got a same kind of job at a smaller company, Ventura Corporation, founded by some former Pricewaterhouse type people. And, I worked in the consulting field for about the first 11 plus years of my career, building systems, being, pretty technical, doing technical design, did a lot of coding. Then I learned how to manage projects, and then moved into sort of more program management. And, that sort of path was all sort of what I wanted to do since I was like 12 or 13 years old. I mean, when I was in seventh grade, it was 1985, and there were Apple IIe's in my seventh grade, in my middle school. And in seventh grade, there was a teacher. Her name was Mrs. Van Veen, and she taught kids programming during lunch. It wasn't a class. It was like, you can come here and learn how to do some AppleSoft basic coding. And I really liked it. I got a computer. I made my parents buy me a computer with my bar mitzvah money a couple of months later. And, I just coded a lot of very basic programs, no pun intended. It was all Apple basic. But when I got to college, I took, these systems engineering classes that had a lot of computer science elements and things like that. And it was just sort of something I had been doing for a while, and I liked doing, and it kind of led me down this path. And I thought I would stay in these kinds of jobs, building systems for my career. But, you don't necessarily know the direction your career is going to go. And one of the projects that I worked on when I was at Ventura Corporation was for the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. We built a system that managed the retailers in the food stamp program. And it had been a long project. I came in about midway. It was somewhat troubled and behind schedule, things like that. And, together as a team, we turned it around. I became the project manager as we sort of replanned, and we were successful in its implementation ultimately, and stuck around that agency and the related projects for a while. And eventually the CIO of Food and Nutrition, he reached out to me about whether I'd ever be interested in joining the federal government. And I thought about it. I wasn't really sure if that was something that I would ever do. But he thought I would be a good candidate for a deputy position that he was going to hire for, and he asked me to apply. And I applied, and like a year later, I had an interview. You know how it is with the federal government at times. And I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to go and become a federal employee and do that, do the work that I was, or be responsible for managing the work that I had been around for so long. People who are not in the government look at the government sometimes skeptically. But, I thought it was, there were too many positive aspects of making that switch that I really wanted to do it. And during that time, you had mentioned I was part of the ACT-IAC community organization. I was in their Voyagers program, and as a person from industry, and I was paired with somebody from government, and I've met a lot of these folks who are working in government. They are very smart and very talented. They are working very hard. I can see myself doing that. And I made the switch. I was selected for the position, fortunately, and I became the deputy CIO for the Food and Nutrition Service. And right when my first son was born, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to have all this, not free time, but I'll have, less stress. Well, little did I know, working for the government can be, it's 24/7, especially when you're running an operation, and it took me a little while to adjust, to the role of being a deputy CIO and being responsible for the day-to-day operation. I came in having been in this consultant mindset, and the first several months, I was like, I'm the super consultant. I can solve all the problems, and it wasn't necessarily the right approach for this kind of job. And I was very fortunate. I had good mentors. The person who hired me, he was a very good mentor, and I had executive coaching and others who give me a hand. And through those efforts, I really had this epiphany that in this kind of job, I really need to be focused on creating the environment where the problems can be solved and not solving the problems. And that really changed my approach. It gave me a lot more, I think, credibility with the teams that I worked with at the time, and really set me on a path to becoming a leader of these kinds of organizations. And eventually, I became the CIO for the Food and Nutrition Service. And I moved over to GSA for a little while, and worked in a variety of IT leadership positions there. And eventually, I had a chance to return to USDA to work for the Secretary of Agriculture. It was Secretary Vilsack at the time. He's secretary again under President Biden. And I was worked on a project specifically for him to, again, similar to that project I worked on at FNS many years before, get our hands around an IT project at a different agency. And, we were successful in kind of getting things under control. And then, as I say, we brought it to a graceful conclusion. And it was good for the agency. It was good for the department. It was good for the farmers and ranchers that this program was serving. And based on those efforts, he appointed me to be the CIO for the department. I was in that role for a while. And, eventually, it came to a point where I felt like my government career was, at a point where I'd accomplished a lot. And while I had some new opportunities in front of me, it felt like an opportunity to maybe move back into the private sector. And, looked around at what was available, and was very fortunate that, in the time that I spent in government and being involved in the federal IT community, ACT-IAC firms, these kinds of things, I got to know a number of people, and different people were willing to take a chance on me coming out of government. It's sometimes it's harder to come out of government than you might think, or at least come out in the right way and come out into a job where you can build on everything that you've learned in government. That's really what I was looking for. And suddenly I found myself as the public sector CTO at Veritas Technologies, and doing great work around data management, working with a really great team. And I was recruited then by ServiceNow to be the federal CTO there. Very similar kind of role, different kind of organization, a little bit, very high growth, and been at ServiceNow for 2.5 years. As we've grown tremendously during that period of time. I heard we hired over 5,000 people during the pandemic. Wow. And it's a different organization than I started in, which is good. It's incredible to be in that kind of high growth environment. I really haven't experienced that before. So it's a lot of fun, and I could not have predicted, Jeremy, when I started my career out of college, that it would have taken this path. I'm very happy with how I've gotten to this point. I feel very proud of the work that I've done, but I never would have predicted it. And whether you say it's a traditional path or non-traditional, I maybe started in a traditional approach, and then it just sort of went its own way. I think there's some lessons in there that are potentially valuable for others.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So as you transitioned out of government, as a government employee myself, how did that transition go, right? In government, we have a very unique mindset about the world and the work we do. And we're serving a public service. How did that transition work for you in terms of the mindset for the leadership role?
Well, first of all, I think what you're just describing, serving the mission, and that is essential to anyone who works in the government. The agencies I worked in was always really an important part of who you are and the role that you play in your small role in delivering the mission, delivering a food stamp benefit or delivering a school lunch or, working on, food safety, whatever it was that we did at the Department of Agriculture, the role we played in IT was connected to that in some manner. And I think people I certainly did take a lot of pride in that. And I would go out and say, I'd see the mission in action, as I would call it. So I could really put 3 dimensions around these activities that require technology, right? And so, coming out of government, you no longer have that connection to the mission as directly, or even if it's indirect a little bit in government, it's right there. You're a few steps removed. So part of what I think I brought to Veritas and I bring to ServiceNow is the reminder that the work we're doing with our customers is really about positioning them to serve their customers really well, to deliver on their mission, whatever that might be, across all the different agencies we work in. I think ServiceNow is, we're deployed in like 352 federal agencies I saw. So there's a lot of people out there benefiting by this work because they have technology capabilities that can help them deliver. And I bring that back into the team all the time to remember why we're here. You're not, you're the people we work with, they're not buying technology because they like it. They're buying technology because the programs they serve need it. And with that mindset, you can I personally can, retain a little bit of the mission connection I think is so important to anybody who works in the government. I would say one other thing, Jeremy, that coming out was important to me, and some people advised me on this, and I definitely, feel like it was really good advice. And I felt this was important for me personally when I transitioned out. When you're in these CIO roles or, other leadership roles in government, you have naturally, some relevance. You're on a panel or they want to hear what the CIO for USDA is thinking about the network or cybersecurity or whatever. Just the role conveys some relevance. You leave, you don't have that title. You don't have that natural relevance any longer. But I like the opportunity to be relevant, to share my ideas, to, put out some things for people to react to and be part of the conversation. So you have to create that on your own. And I spent a lot of time in those first, few months coming out, kind of repositioning myself as not the former CIO for USDA, but as a person who really understands what it's like to be a CIO, take the agency away, what it's like to run technology systems, to deliver outcomes that support a mission, what it's like to try and do transformation, to do change management, to be responsible for cybersecurity, and come at the problems that all agencies have. And I've worked at the federal level mostly, but also state and local governments at times. And the challenges, and not just in the U.S. and internationally as well, these challenges have a lot of consistency. And I find more as I interact with some of my colleagues on the commercial side. It's not just in the federal government, it's in private sector. IT is hard. Running it is hard. Making sure that we get the most value out of these investments is hard. So we share a lot of the same challenges, and being able to talk about those challenges in a way that can, resonate with people you might not have worked with before, who might not know your background, something that I had to work on. And, I've sort of built my post-government brand by doing a lot of writing and participating in panels and interviews and, building my my persona around these digital transformation topics or modernization topics. So that was, that was something that was really important. You just can't, for me, it wasn't, I just couldn't come out and rely on what I did before. I had to use that to create something new. And, that's what I've been doing now for 4 years. And I plan to continue to do and bring that to the teams I work with today. And, I think that is some of the value I bring to my organization.
That's really good. Wow. I really appreciate that. So as you've gone through your varied career at different levels and in government and out of government, what's something you've witnessed that we do in this, in our IT field that if you had the ability to change it, if you could come up, they came to you, Jonathan, and said, Jonathan, you get to make the change, right? Or you get to suggest a change we should consider. What's something you've kind of seen in your career that we should reconsider or change how we do?
Well, there's a lot, but one of the things that that I find very challenging, and I found it in the government, and I think I see it today still, is we don't. The relationships between industry and government aren't always as smooth as they should be, or not as supportive as they should be. We're in this together, right? Whether you're working for the government or you're selling something to the government or performing a service for the government, the outcome is really important because it's a mission outcome of our government that is supporting our fellow citizens. And we can become very confrontational at times when we don't manage these relationships well. We can be fighting over contract requirements or pricing or these things, and sometimes we can lose the big picture. So I really wish there was a way to always have it be a win-win, where agencies can get the technology they need at a fair exchange of value with the providers who offer the service or the software that that's needed. And I felt that when I was a CIO and I worked in the government. I see that now. Sometimes it's just harder than it needs to be. We don't always speak the same language. We don't trust each other. We don't understand each other. I think there's a value, that I bring, and some of my colleagues who've worked in government can bring as well, by helping people I work with today understand how the customer might be thinking about this thing we're proposing or this problem they have and how they're trying to solve it and how we might be able to help. Just that, I sat in a similar kind of position at some point in my career, and I can think a little bit about how I would have dealt with that problem, offers my team some perspective maybe they don't have. And I'm hoping things like that, change the dynamic as they interact with their customers. That plus, when you're the buyer on the federal side, you kind of what you know. You don't know this about how a company might sell a software or sell a service unless you've been on the other side and you've sold that service, or you've delivered that service, or you sold that software or implemented it. You don't really understand all the complexity of working in a private sector organization. And, I'd like to think that at ServiceNow, we've focused a lot of time on making it easy to do business, easy to serve customers. I really believe that we've done that. It's still hard at times, though. And we continue to focus on providing great customer service and experiences to the people we serve through a variety of means, but it still can be hard. And I think the more opportunity there is for people to experience working in the government or experience working in a private sector organization and providing service or selling a software or whatever your role is in this IT ecosystem that we're all part of, we'd have empathy for each other's positions, and we'd have more mutual understanding. And I think we'd have a lot smoother transactions and relationships, so we can stay focused on delivering for the mission. And I think sometimes we can, lose that focus because the process is so hard. And I wish I could, snap my fingers and everybody understands each other and the demands and challenges of each other's jobs. And we could build on that to have, harmony and 100% mission focus.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I'm a big fan of the different organizations and that help bring together government and industry, and I think that helps bridge that challenge at times, right? There's so many government people I work with who are either afraid or non-trusting, right, of industry. They don't want to talk to them in any way, shape, or form. And then how are we supposed to solve problems if we don't talk?
Right. Agreed. You have to talk, and you really have to try and understand the perspective of the person who's presenting to you, whether it's the person from the company or the person from the agency. And unless you walked in their shoes, it can be very hard. So I'm all for more kinds of shared experiences.
So what's next for you, or what's continuing for you? What's going on in the business or for you personally coming up in the near future?
Well, I'm really excited by what's in the president's management agenda around strengthening federal employees, around the customer experience aspects and the related executive order on customer experience, and then this idea of making the business of government work really well. At ServiceNow, we have this global solutions framework. We talk about employee experiences, which aligns right to priority one around strengthening and empowering the federal workforce. We talk about customer experiences, aligns directly to having these, focus on great customer service and equity. That's in priority two. And then we talk about technology excellence, and we talk about operating excellence. We talk about excellence in innovation, which is the business of government. And, we didn't write our government solutions framework. We didn't write our solutions framework based on the president's management agenda. But when the PMA came out and we look at this framework that we have as a company, the alignment was incredible. I mean, blown away by how well the things we do as a company align to the things that this administration is focused on. So a lot of what I'm working on is, getting out there to tell that story, getting out there to make sure that people understand how important it is, to think about your employees, how important it is to think about the journeys your customers take, to design from, I like to say from the outside in, as opposed to the inside out. We have a lot of systems that, we've built over time, and I did this as well, where you're building a system so you can get the data you need and meet your program requirements, but you're not necessarily thinking about how your system might relate to another system or another program that same person is using at the same time. And we might make it harder on them because we're not thinking comprehensively. The executive order talks about these life experiences, the executive order on customer experience, these life experiences, whether you're applying for a loan, or you're experiencing poverty, or you're starting a small business, whatever. There's a number of them. And when you have one of those things in your life, you're dealing with a lot of agencies across the federal government and maybe the state government, local government. So there's a big opportunity to make those interactions simpler. You shouldn't have, if you're experiencing poverty, you need help, you shouldn't have to figure out how to navigate the bureaucracies of several federal agencies, state agencies, local government agencies. It should be super simple to get the help you need. And I think that's a problem that, we can really help solve for at ServiceNow. And so I'm out there sort of telling that story, along with this idea of how do we run excellent IT organizations, provide excellent technology experiences. Technology is the foundation for, every agency at this point. So interacting with IT needs to be simple. We need to operate very effectively. And if we can do those things, then we can serve our employees, we can serve our customers, and, wrap it all in looking at new capabilities, emerging technologies, and always be thinking about innovation aspects of automation that gives us the ability to, again, be more focused on delivering for the mission, getting out of the day-to-day kinds of tasks that are sometimes they're very important because, we have to get them done, but they take a lot of time, and there are things that are still manual in nature. And if we can automate those things, we can run, better organizations. So I'm really interested in continuing to talk about those things with customers, with my colleagues at ServiceNow and across the federal IT community, and see if we can take this moment to make real change in how we serve the American public.
Well, Jonathan, I agree with you, and I look forward to seeing how that works for you. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, I really enjoyed it, Jeremy. Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to do it again.